Hello everybody and welcome to the May edition of the Divine. In this episode we're going to be talking about assigned advising service model improvements. So it's been 6 months since we started implementing our assigned advising pilot, and I thought this would be a good point to check in and review how things have been working so far. If you remember, back in October we submitted our pilot proposal and we recommended a number of things that we would need to begin doing in preparation for assigned advising. Some of those things were we needed an established method for identifying advising caseloads. We wanted new resources and technology to ensure that advisors have access to information they need to effectively engage, monitor, and develop their students. We talked about the need for a new communication strategy that connects advisors to their students, faculty, academic programs they oversee, and other academic advisors. And we also wanted to adjust our service model so that the manner in which we conduct business at the Student Services Center reflects the new assigned advising model. So in this episode I want to talk specifically about that last point. What are some of the ways in which we've improved our service model? And when I say service model, I just mean the way we conduct business when students come here to the center. Whatever they come here looking to get, how is it that we're providing those services to our students? And we identified several ways in which we could improve our services so that when students come here, they had a better experience and were more likely to continue with their education here at Pima. So in doing that, I think we need to cover what did the service model look like before we implemented the pilot, and how is it working now that we've made some adjustments to the way we were doing that. So I want to start out, we're going to take a look at how we used to do services here at the center and take a look at some of the flaws in that system, and then afterwards we're going to show how we've changed it and what improvements have been made as a result of that. So let's start out by taking a look at what I call our pre-pilot service model. Here we go. Okay, so here we have a schematic of the Desert Vista Student Services Center. And before we go through and point out some of the flaws of the old system, I think it's important to review there were some pretty big differences in the way our center used to be set up. So first of all, let's take a look at what those differences are. Up here we have, this is the welcome desk. It's in the same place as it used to be. However, if you remember, the welcome desk was not just a place for greeting and triaging students. It used to be the place where a lot of our quick services were done: registration, adding and dropping classes, tuition assessment forms, changing residency, printing unofficial transcripts. A lot of that was done out of the welcome desk. So this area was responsible for doing a lot of the transactions that should be going through Express. Speaking of Express, Express did not used to be located at one of the staff stations. If you remember, it was up at the welcome desk towards the back, and this was an area that traditionally an advanced specialist staffed, and they were responsible for doing so-called quick advising transactions. These are transactions that should take less than 10 minutes, and they did a lot of financial aid intake. Over here you see with this oval, this represents the desk where we have our self-help kiosk, and that's where either a staff member or a student could go directly, sign themselves into Qnami, and get a service ticket printed. And then finally over here we have the staff stations. These are the desk stations. But the main thing I want to point out about these is these were pretty much reserved for advisors. Most of the time we had 3 people using them, and 3 desks were empty, and this is where the advising took place and nothing more. This is one of the key changes that we made in preparation for assigned advising with forward-facing financial aid staff, and now with CTD in the center. That's one of the big changes that we'll see in the next section. So let's take a look at a typical case study of what might have happened under the old service model. So with this smiley face, you see this is representing a student that comes in. Let's say the student wanted to register for a class, a summer class, and they have an instructor's signed. They have a registration form signed by an instructor to go ahead and add the class. Again, in the old system, this was done right here at the welcome desk. So what would have happened is the person at the welcome desk would have got started processing that registration transaction. And a lot of times what we saw is while they were busy processing a transaction, lines started to form. So very quickly you could go from having nobody in line to 2 or 3 people or more in line, especially during peak. And this was one of the key problems at use of the old system, the fact that we were allowing transactions to be done right here at the welcome desk, and it led to a lot of bottlenecking. The other problem is that students quickly figured out that there was a way around this. This student here, this student highlighted with the green, is an example of what might have happened. A lot of these students got wise to the fact that rather than wait in line, what they could do, a faster way, is to speed things up a little bit. They could bypass the welcome desk altogether and go directly over to the self-help kiosk. And oftentimes what they would do is sign themselves in. Let's say this student needed to, let's say, update their residency. Okay, a lot of times they would sign themselves in to meet with an advisor for that. So they would select advising only, get an advising ticket, and then they would just sit around and wait. Well, the problem with that is some of the transactions they were coming in for, these students were basically misdiagnosing themselves, or routing themselves to an area that wasn't the most efficient use of their time or the staff's time. So in this particular case, if the student is basically trying to update their residency, that's something that can be done through Express. They don't have to wait to see an advisor to do that. And oftentimes what would happen is, they would be stuck in the queue for a long time. Time would go by, and these students would give up waiting because the advising queue was getting clogged up with unnecessary requests. And unfortunately, a lot of these students, after waiting for so long, they would just leave. They would abandon the service ticket, and they would basically leave the center. Okay, one of the other problems was that we noticed was over here at Express. Again, there was this is where quick advising transactions happen, and also things like precking students for classes, doing financial aid intake. So much like at the welcome desk, you oftentimes got lines forming over here by Express. That caused, you know, three major things. One, a lot of times these transactions weren't being logged into Qnami, so we were not getting credit or accurately reflecting the amount of services we were providing. The other thing is, as you can see here in the picture, these lines are oftentimes, with financial aid and quick advising, you have no idea what the student or what issues are going to come up with the student. So sometimes sensitive information could be divulged between the staff member and the student they're working with, and everybody in the line would be able to hear what was going on. So that was a FERPA issue. That was a problems, with confidentiality, and there was potential for issues with that. The other thing again is, as you can see here, all of these students are waiting to be served, and just like with the welcome desk, you're going to get people waiting a long time, especially if these are advising transactions, and one question often leads to another, and so a three-person line could take half an hour or more to clear, and so you get students upset. And just like in the last example, some students will end up leaving the center or having a bad experience. So those are some of the key flaws of the old way when we use the self-help kiosk as the primary way of entering students into our Qnami system. Okay, now that we've had a chance to look at the pre-pilot service model, how we used to do our services here in the center, let's take a look now at how things have changed since December of 2014 when we began implementing the current service model. Okay, so here we have our Student Services Center, and I'd like to review some of the changes that we made in preparation for assigned advising. First of all, the banner, the Kunami self-help kiosk has been removed. And in its place, we found something that is able to print service tickets, which was one of the main reasons we held on to that thing so long, is it was our only way of printing a service ticket. Staff members could enter students into Kunami from the front desk, but there was no way of printing tickets. So we worked with IT and we found a way to have Kunami communicate with this ticket printing machine. So now when a student comes up to the welcome desk, they can be entered into the Kunami queue and get a service ticket printed right there. The other bonus of this is that we are now able to enter notes for any student. Whatever the transaction is regarding, we can place a note in there so that whoever's going to be helping the student has a heads up what the student is requesting. That's something that we were never able to do using the self-help kiosk. So that was one of the big changes. Another thing is Express. We talked about some of the issues with having Express located up at the welcome desk. Express has now been moved over to a staff station. So anytime a service ticket is printed for somebody to go to Express, they will be meeting at one of the staff stations in the back rather than up at the front counter, which makes a huge difference. In addition, the staff stations are no longer used strictly for advising. We also have stations, as I mentioned, for Express. We have financial aid out there, and also, as of this month, late last month, the Center for Training and Development has staff out there to help students who come into the center. And the other thing that has changed significantly is over here at the welcome desk. We are no longer processing any type of transaction at the welcome desk. The welcome desk is strictly for triaging students. Well, first of all, for greeting students and welcoming them to the center, and then that staff member will triage the students and send them to the appropriate service area. So, as I mentioned before, you can kind of think of the welcome desk as a funnel where all the incoming students come. Somebody listens to what they need and then funnels them off to the appropriate service area. So this person, the people working at the welcome desk, really function almost like traffic directors in the center. They're the ones deciding, after listening to the student, what area of service they're going to be directed to. Okay, so let's take a look at a sample case study. This is an example of how things work now in the center. You have a student here, we'll call him Mr. Green. Let's say Mr. Green comes in and says they would like to meet with somebody in financial aid. Well, one of the first things that we're going to do is ask probing questions. So let's say after a series of questions we discover that the person at the welcome desk finds out that Mr. Green is seeking to turn in his financial aid documents. He also has questions on Pell eligibility. These are all things that the student truly would need to meet with somebody in financial aid to address. And so this person at the welcome desk would enter them into Kunami to meet with a financial aid representative, print a ticket, and within minutes that student would be meeting with the financial aid specialist. Okay, this is all happening relatively quickly. So then you have another person, Yellow, coming up. Let's say this student, Yellow, informs the person at the welcome desk that they would like to meet with an advisor. So after a series of probing questions, what the staff member discovers is that Yellow is here to get registered for a Biology 202 class in the summer. Let's say he's currently taking Biology 201. He'd like to get cleared to take Biology 202 in the summer. Well, this isn't something that an advisor necessarily has to meet with them for. This is something that can be handled through our Express Center. And that's good because it's going to get the student in and out quickly, and also it's not going to clog up the advising line, the advising queue with students who could really be served quicker through Express. So in this case, the welcome desk staff member would print out a service ticket for the student to meet with Express, and that student would be directed over to that station, and within 5 minutes or less they would be in and out of the center. Okay, let's say student red comes up to the counter, and this person really doesn't know what they want to do. They inform the staff member that they've applied to the college, they've taken their assessment test, but at this point they really don't know what program of study they should be in, and they would like to meet with somebody to talk about what kind of classes they should enroll in. Well, this is really something that an advisor would be needed to help sort through. And so in this case, it would be warranted to print a ticket for the student to meet with an advisor. Okay, so that happens relatively quickly, and as you see, we're moving people in and out uh, very fast. So that ends up being a good thing because, as you can see here, the student Blue, we'll call him, uh, he came to the center from the moment he got here. He was upset. So he gets to the counter, and it's a good thing he didn't have to wait in line too long. But he gets here and he's complaining that although he's been living in Arizona for 37 years, he was put in as an out-of-state student. So the staff member would ask some probing questions, take a look at their profile, and sees that they are indeed entered as an out-of-state student. This would be something that would be handled through Express, where the student would not have to wait too long. They could quickly meet with somebody and get that residency changed if it's warranted. In fact, while the student is waiting for their service number to be called, they could be given the paperwork to start filling out, the domicile affidavit and the verification of lawful presence form. And in this particular case, just as they're wrapping up filling out all of their paperwork, they're called over to meet with somebody in Express. And minutes later, the student is changed to an in-state resident, and all of uh, his or her issues are addressed. And so this is how, as you can see here, this is the benefit of having a trained staff member routing students as opposed to students putting themselves in the queue. Uh, we get people in and out of the center more efficiently, and that leads to lower wait times and happier students. Okay, so now that we've had a chance to look at both of the service models, I want to take a look at some of the numbers, the actual data that we've pulled from Qnami, and this should show that the changes that we made weren't just cosmetic; they really are having an impact on the level of service that we provide here at the Desert Vista Student Services Center. So to do that, what we did is we pulled some reports from Qnami, both of them covering identical time ranges, December 1st to April 30th, the only difference being that they were a year apart. So uh, what the numbers you see here are a snapshot of what service looked like under the old model. So we pulled a report from December 1st, 2013 to April 30th, 2014 when the old pilot model was in effect, and these are the numbers that we got during that time span. The total number of students that we served during that time was exactly 2,500 students. The average time that they waited here for service in the center was 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and the percentage of abandon rate percentage was 1.4%, which means 1.4% of the students that were issued a service ticket did not wait around long enough to be served by whatever staff member, whatever service area they were intending to go to. Okay, let's compare that to some of the numbers that we get from our current service model. So we did the exact same report a year later when we implemented some of the changes here. So this is December 1st, 2014 to this past April, April 30th, 2015. And in that same time span, 1 year apart, you can see our total service number, total number of customers served actually doubled, slightly over doubled. We went from 2,500 students to 5,004 students. That's slightly over 100% increase. If you look at the average wait time, that is now down to 4 minutes and 50 seconds, which is almost a 2-minute reduction in the amount of time students are having to wait. And then the percentage of students that are abandoning their service, that has gone down. It's been cut in half actually to 0.7%. So what does that tell us? Well, one of the first things it tells us is that we're getting a more accurate accounting of our service numbers. In other words, under the old model, we saw that the welcome desk staff was frequently tasked with they were processing transactions up there instead of just welcoming and greeting students and triaging them to the right area of service. They were having to perform service transactions at the welcome desk, which led to longer lines, and the pressure of having to get students in and out frequently meant that that information was not entered into Qnami when a student came up to the front. And in fact, why should they do that when they were going to perform the service themselves and there was a line backing up? Oftentimes the Qnami element actually capturing that a service was done was just neglected in because of the need to move the students out quicker. And the same thing was happening at our express stations. You know, when you had a line forming behind express, entering that information into Qnami was just another thing that the staff members had to do, even though they weren't going to be printing a ticket for those students. So the fact that we now run all of our services through the welcome desk and they are no longer having to provide transactions there has enabled them to focus more on entering the data into Qnami, and so we're capturing our services better. And you can see that basically in the numbers of students that we're serving. So here's a quick comparison. If you look, the 13-14 numbers again was 2,500 students, and then in the 14-15 range, the same time span, that number doubled to 5,004 students. Okay, so this gives us a clearer picture of how many students are actually coming to the center and how many we're assisting. The second thing that we can see from these numbers is that our services have gotten more efficient. How do we know that? Because the wait time is going down. It's dropped nearly 2 minutes. From under the old service model, the average time a student would wait was 6 minutes and 30 seconds. That is now down to 4 minutes and 50 seconds. And as a consequence, students are waiting around more instead of abandoning their service calls. So our abandon rate has dropped from 1.4% and it's now down to 0.7%. So hopefully this gives those of you who, I know it was hard to make these adjustments at first, but you can see that your efforts and the plan that we have in place is working. It's leading to concrete results, and it's resulting in better experiences for our students when they come to the Desert Vista Student Services Center. So that about wraps up the review for this month's episode of the Divine. Fernando and I would like you to know that we do have more things to come that we will be covering over the summer. We want to continue building on this foundation that we've set up, and part of that has to do with how are we going to reach out to students in a more proactive way from the moment they apply here to Pima College until the moment that they meet with their assigned advisor. How can we help them bridge the gap and avoid some of the pitfalls that may get in the way of them taking classes here? And that means reaching out to them, when they apply. It means reaching out to them, at an orientation, and also getting them connected with our assigned advising services. That's it for this month's episode of the Divine. There will be more to come next month, as I've explained. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.